Hi, Misha here. It's time for another Swiss SIG or SAN SG551 video. And this is my 551 LB. Honestly, this might be the most common gun on the table today. Another one you've seen in other videos, I've had for about a year, is my SiG PE-90 SG550 semi-auto. And while these are not uncommon in Switzerland, this is their semi-automatic version. In the US, they are pretty rare, frankly. But even this is probably not the rarest one on the table. That would be this here. And the reason for doing this video today. This is the SIG SG551-2 SP. Now you've seen those 551-2s that Mike Ott sold a few years ago, the Louisiana wildlife fishing game guns. There's around 100 of those. This, however, is a variant from the late 80s, made specifically for the American market. The initial 551, often referred to today as the 551 SP for short barrel, has a 14.3-inch barrel. Now the way, at least in the beginning, SIG would do their barrels, the flash hider is part of the barrel. It's not pinned on, it's physically machined as part of the barrel. So at the 14.3, it would just barely come out to here, and that would include the flash hider. Of course, as you know, that's not legal. Now, the LB here, the 551 LB, is a military police version. Including the flash hider, it has a 17.8-inch barrel. It's extended out long enough to have the bulge for the grenade, and it can mount a bayonet. Notice it pretty much mirrors the profile on the end of the barrel as the 550 PE-90. Even though this has a 21-inch barrel, this has the longer rifle length, full-length gas system, piston and tube, and handguard, along with the folding light bipod. Whereas the 551s both have the same shorter carbine length gas system with shorter handguards, and no bipod as standard. So yeah, initially we had the 551 SP, later joined by the 551 LB. So either 14.3 or 17.8-inch barrels. But for the US market, SIG would introduce this, which is nearly identical to the original, but with the 16.1-inch. So if you chop the flash hider off, it's actually more like a 14.5-inch barrel. But since this is integrated, it's counted towards, so they made it just long enough to be legal to import. The thing is, as far as I know, this version was only ever made for the American market because it's our market that has that minimum 16-inch length. So I thought we would compare and contrast the differences, because in addition to being a rare version, in terms of pure numbers made, probably the rarest one on the table, this is an early production model, meaning it has some pretty interesting early features. And there are very few in the US, and very few are made, period. Well, I've told you about the history of the 550 before, but if you know me, I can't help but reiterate it again. Just kind of Cliff's Notes version. SiG, and actually they partnered with Beretta for a brief time in the 1960s, was working on a rifle to fire the new 223-556 NATO, as it later known, cartridge. They would go through the 520 and 530s. They would hit on the 540, which actually would go into production. But then in the late 70s, the Swiss government, was looking to replace its aging STGW-57s, firing the 7.5 GP11 round. And so they tried several cartridges, including a one known as 5.6, which was a Swissified 63 grain projectile. Technically not the same as NATO, but it was the same. Yeah, it's political, and yeah, they did their own thing. Also, it was very accurate. But to go for this, they needed a new rifle. Well, Bern would submit their version, and SiG would take the SG540. They would update it for the trials. They would submit a rifle length, 21-inch barrel, as the SG551. And they would submit a carbine length, 14.3-inch barrel, is the SG543. Essentially, these were selected after trials in 1983 for further development. They would upgrade them, becoming the 550 and 551. One of the big changes, they went to a stainless steel, more corrosion-resistant gas system. They also improved the furniture, mainly the buttstock, and they would go to a different selector and fire modes, which is really neither here nor there when it gets to the semi-autos. But yeah, they would introduce them in 1986, and actually they would not be fully adopted into military service until 1990. But early on, the Swiss Army would start acquiring lower rate production 550s. Now these would be adopted as the STGW-90, which is still their standard rifle to this very day. Now the carbine, originally known as the Headquarter Carbine, which was part of the trials, really never was purchased in any numbers by the military, although it was designated as the STGW-90K for curves. But it seems like it ended up being more of a police gun. Instead of going to the 14.3 or even 17.8 version, they would actually go to an even smaller version, first the 552, and later the 553. But that's a story for another time. I mention this because quite early on, really even before the Swiss military had put them into full service, SiG Sauer, USA, located in Herndon, Virginia, started importing these guns. 1987, 1988, they started bringing over the initial SG550-1, which had a 1 in 10 twist, and then later the 550-2, which had a 1 in 7, followed by SP for sporter, meaning semi-automatic. Now, not many came in, between 400 and 500 total. And even back then, these were horribly expensive. In fact, if anything, they're a tiny bit cheaper today once you adjust for inflation than they were back then. But But anyway, of course, they started with the 21-inch rifle. And then, in late 1988, they started bringing over this exact gun here, the 551. Now, anyone in the comments, let me know. All the 551s I've seen, the US versions have been -2, so 1 and 7. Has anyone seen a 551-1 with the 1 in 10 twist, 16.1-inch barrel? Just because I've never seen it or heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. However, very few of these came in. In fact, really only one batch to note came in, and estimates range from about 45 to 55 in the country. Some people have said a few more, but double digits seems to be the common accepted number, because they just started to bring these in when the 89 ban came down in March of 1989, obviously, because I just said that. Hey, it's late, guys. And that was pretty much it. It is worth pointing out that in the 1990s, after the ban, DS Arms would import, or at least sell, a small number of neutered rifles. For example, they would not have the flash hider, they would not have a working folding stock, and so on and so forth. But I don't believe DS Arms did any 551s. However, there was one company, known as Capital, that did have a small number of 551 LB types in the late 90s. But really, up until the Mike Ott surplus guns hit the market, we didn't have true 551s. There were those things that SiG Sauer, New Hampshire, USA, put together claiming that they were Swiss, but really all they were Swiss lowers mated to SIG SIG 556 uppers. Yeah, again, a story for another day. And then, of course, they did the SIG 551A1, which honestly isn't a bad gun for the money. Jay still owns one. But, again, it's a U.S. thing. It's not really Swiss. At most, the only thing Swiss about them were their mags, and originally they used Swiss butt stocks. Of course, most recently, JDI, now SAN Imports, out of Frisco, Texas, has brought over some new production from SAN, which really, SAN became a thing, Swiss Arms Neuhausen, because around 2000, SIG in Switzerland sold off its firearms division to a holding company, the Lukemeyer Group. And even though the same building was kept, even a lot of the same employees, the same tooling, basically it was a rebranding post-Cold War era. Same thing like IMI becoming IWI. You get the idea. As I said though, JDI has brought over some. Initially they started off bringing over 51 of the 551 SBs with the 14.3-inch barrel. And then they brought over 50 of the 551 LBs with the 17.8-inch barrel, which I have here. They've also brought over a few so-called conversion kits, which were just the upper receivers. So yeah, little over 100, if you count the conversion kits, have been brought in by JDI, and 50 or less came in during the Preban era. Another 100 or so, 150 at most, police guns came from Mike Ott, and then a few dribs and drabs here and there. And that's what we've had in America. So with that said, let's get a little more up close and compare features while we have the opportunity to compare some pretty uncommon guns. So I got these flipped over. I should mention this has the modern NATO magazine compatible lower It's machined aluminum. Originally it came, and I still have it of course, with a machined aluminum lower that took the Swiss magazines. But I just wanted to be a little different. Likewise, I put in the NATO M7 M9 bayonet lug. But as obviously you see, this has the most, well, nearly the most current. It still has the fixed buttstock, not the sliding one. But pretty much has the modern furniture, all black appearance. This still has the diopter sights. This is a good example of a current production one. This and this both have the earlier style of buttstock, kind of informally known as the whale tail. Has a different shape to the butt plate. Has a different shape up here. The sling swivel is actually asymmetrical. It's kind of canted over to one side. It is just generally a different, though related, but still different style of buttstock. Versus this. Also, this has the typical stamped and welded steel lower, as well as stamped and welded steel upper. This, however, has the early pattern of lower, a double magwell dimple, as you see. The change was made to improve feeding and also mag insertion, but that's more to do with full autos. This kind of is just a little bit deeper magwell. The flange comes down a little more. This one sticks out a little more. It doesn't go as far forward as this one. You see this has big support here. This does not. Minor little product improvement they made, but it is something that you can look for if you see this kind of shallow double dimple looking magwell that's early. Also the handguards. Obviously this being the rifle, it has its own pattern. And if you look at this, you'll see this is the, the modern one that we're used to, with this hand stop here. Kind of the shape to things. But this is actually an early pattern of handguard. For one thing, it has the square vent holes in the bottom, not round. But most importantly, for collectors, it doesn't have the hand stop back here. It's just straight back. Of course, the rifle is similar. So basically, it really is just a shortened version of the rifle handguard. It's not a cut down like on the 5.52, 5.53, but yeah. Whereas when they went to the more modern molding, they made it a little more distinctive, a little more comfortable. Mostly so your hand wouldn't ride back on your receiver. Makes perfect sense for a carbine. The front sights are pretty well all the same. Folding night sight, windage adjustable, hooded front post. And all three have a Swiss style flash hider. However, you'll notice something. This has a ring under the gas block, which mounts the, in this case, Swiss pattern bayonet lug. This has the same ring. Like I said, I put in a NATO. Both of these have the grenade bulge with a little spring in it. However, notice this is flat. On the Preban examples, 550 or 551, they machined off the loop for the bayonet lug. Now, since this has a barrel especially made for the US market and also too short anyway for rifle grenades, it doesn't matter. But on the 550 Prebans, they still have a hump in the barrel, but actually they machine it down from about 22 millimeter to about 20 or 19 millimeters, getting rid of they basically machine it down to where the spring goes. So there's still a bulge in the barrel, but you can no longer mount a grenade. Likewise, of course, this is a 22 millimeter flash hider. But this, while it looks similar, is actually machined down like the grenade bulge. So I've seen people, because it's actually very easy to replace these gas blocks, just 2 big roll pins. On a Preban gun, they'll take the neutered gas block off, and they'll put a gas block on like this, so they can have a bayonet lug. But the problem is, you still have this turned down flash hider. So if you try to put a bayonet on it, it'll fit, but it'll rattle around rather loosely. Something else rather interesting to point out are the internal threads. This LB, like also the SG553 LB, has internal threads at the end of the flash hider. Notice how the slots stop a little bit before the end. That's for a blank fire device or a sound suppressor. Now, even the military 550s often don't have those threads because, longer barrel, and they were kind of made at a time before that was a thing. But a lot of the 551 imports, like the JDIs, and of course also the Louisiana Wildlife Fishing Game Guns, have them. But these Prebans did not. Notice how the flash slots end right at the edge. Very thin little wall there. Whereas even on this one, there's a little bit more meat. And on this one, again, there's quite a bit. Just a little difference. Showing you that even Preban guns were neutered sometimes. One other thing, notice this is a very straight SiG gray finish to the metal. Early production guns would have more of a green hue. It's actually still kind of a gray, although a lot of people will call it green on green, just to differentiate it. That's another thing you can tell about an early production example, is the kind of greenish hue to the... This is a very good finish too. It's kind of a ceramic base, very wear and moisture resistant. They would do kind of the gray-green metal and green handguard version. They would also do more of a version like this, straight gray and green. And there were even a few Preban black and gray. And I've even heard tell of a couple of black on black 551s. So even though they brought over just a few Maybe it was like a kind of a pre-production sample to see which ones sold best. That would make sense, and these were expensive enough. Even if they just brought over 10 or 12 of each style. Yeah, and then kind of see, and then bring over more. But there are some variations in these. But yeah, something you do not see much of today. And since I had the opportunity, I thought, why not do another video on Swiss guns covering the Preban 551-2 SP. I don't know if there's a video on YouTube of this. If there is, I bet there's not many. Of course, it still has a totally functional folding stock and all that good jazz. I was very tempted by it when this first came in, but in the end, even though this is definitely more collectible, I like the more straight military features and appearance of the current JDI 551 LB. That's just me, though. I'd rather have the bayonet lug, the grenade ring, the threaded flash hider than I would a Preban gun, but one that doesn't have a military barrel length, because again, like I said, the 16.1 inch barrel was only done for us, and neutered gas block. Plus, this is definitely, even though this one's a shooter grade, entering the realm of collectability. As you see, I have the extended 30 round mag and this one, and the original 20 round and the PE-90. This is really still now the standard in the Swiss Army. This was made for export and commando use. They still prefer their soldiers to operate on semi-automatic and take careful aimed shots. Still how they train things. But yeah, these of course can use either one. This is a rock and lock style mag, as I'm sure most of you know. Come on. Kind of based on the AK. All polymer, very lightweight. Has these studs on the side to lock them together. Kind of flexible, but extremely tough and durable. And actually very beneficial to have a mag like this in the cold of Switzerland. Really great mags. Again, lightweight, durable, reliable. They do have a bolt hole open. Easy to load. They do have a stripper clip guide. They have their own pattern of clips, but they also make a NATO compatible, so you can load these from either standard NATO clips or Switzerland's own clips. And again, if you really just want to use AR-15 mags, you can get an AR-15 lower, and all you have to do is pop 2 push pins. I mean, it couldn't be more simple. And the thing about these, the upper is the registered gun, the serial numbered part. The lower is just a frame. So, doesn't matter. Typically, the serialized parts on these are the upper receiver, lower receiver frame, bolt carrier. The barrels won't be serialized, but they do have proof markings if you take the handguard off. Swiss guns in general are pretty marking free. You'll have the name on the side, especially for export, but otherwise you really just have the SIG marking behind the rear sight and the Swiss crest up here. And of course these can mount the QD scope system if you want to put an optic on. You're not just committed to iron sights. And they work pretty well because these are pretty low profile iron sights. They don't stick up near as high as, say, an AR-15. Well, guys, if you have any questions or if you own one of these, love to hear your configuration and experiences in the comments below. Sorry, this is pretty much just a table talk, but when this came in, I hoped you guys would enjoy it, so let me know. Otherwise, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and on behalf of Jay, we appreciate you, and please tune in again soon next time.